Good day, YouTube. It is the 16th of April, 2024, and this will be a little bit of a different video, kind of a Glenn the Collector video, but a history lesson along the way. So I'm a retired second generation electrician, union electrician. My dad, before he passed, and I had 102 years combined membership in IBEW. So if there's some brothers out there, sisters out there, how's it going? I collect a lot of things, and one of them is pre-electric lighting and then early electric lighting. So check that out. That is two Dietz Little Wizard lanterns that I've put next to what appears to be a sign, but is actually a crate, a wooden crate that held, I think, a dozen of those lanterns when they were, sent to the mercantile, 125 years ago or something. Kind of cool. And in my collection on display over here is a lot of different types of lighting, back into the calcium carbide days. There are 4 examples, and behind there's a couple tins of calcium carbide, so my calcium carbide lights all function, they work. One day we'll light them up. And then other, railroad, military, and then just flashlights and so forth. I have in the neighborhood of 125 flashlights. And then all of my kerosene lanterns. I used to have a huge collection of Coleman lanterns, which I sold off the collection. I had over 200 of them, and it just became overwhelming. I still have, not on display, but I have probably 30 or so. And this is a Coleman gasoline lamp, table lamp. It's a little dirty. I heat with wood. It gets dirty in here. But I have something very, very unique to share with you, and that is the purpose of this video. Let me show you. So I mentioned to you I'm a second generation electrician. And I retired about 1.5 years ago. My dad retired from the industry, way before that. He actually came out of retirement, retested for his Oregon license, passed it when he was 72 years old. And because we were just struggling for electricians in our state, and he went back to work for about 500 hours, 3 years in a row, and re-retired about the time that I did, actually. My dad, when he was an apprentice electrician in about 1960, did some work. Because he was the apprentice, he had to go into the attic of our local St. Mary's church. This church was a architectural marvel. It was fantastic. It was beautiful, gorgeous, tall. It was everything. It was built in the late 1880's. And again, my dad was up in the attic at about 1960 and stumbled across 3 or 4 boxes of lights and light sockets and so forth. And he inquired about them, and somebody at the church says, just haul them all out of here, take them. Nobody wants to go up there kind of attitude. And my dad took 3. He took these 3 from that, and one shade actually. And this is the shade, only one, but this is the one. Okay. My dad passed away in September, and I acquired this collection just a few weeks ago. And then last Friday we were discussing this at dinner with family, and I realized that I had never looked this over very closely. I have an interest in lighting, like I showed you, and in my collection, my light bulb collection consisted of this one. That's it. This is the only thing I've ever had prior to acquiring these. Now, I'm going to give you the history of these lights that I know it. This has been in the last 4 days, 5 days, I've been researching this. I've spent a lot of hours at it, and I believe I understand everything. If you know something that I've got wrong, please correct me, because when we get to the end of this video, you'll understand why I want to be accurate, okay? So, this is an Edison type bulb. This is an Edison type bulb. This is a Westinghouse type bulb, okay? Where these have it's a 1-inch diameter thread, I believe 13 threads per inch. It's 13 or 16. I believe it's 13 threads per inch. That is a Edison patent that was patented in about 1880. The Westinghouse is a plug-in socket. Okay, so the hot is here, the neutral would be here, and there's the inside. It actually has a piece that this snaps into, okay? So this is a Westinghouse patent at approximately the same time period as the Edison patent, about 1880. So our St. Mary's Church was built in the very late 1880s, and it was wired with Westinghouse sockets. Now, this particular socket was designed for knob and tube wiring, so it's got a pigtail, solid copper wire pigtail, and this would have been attached to a knob and tube wiring, which would have, passed through the socket, and these would tap along the way. They would probably be wrapped and then soldered. And when they removed these were cut. Now, why did they remove these? Well, even though these both socket types and lamp types were patented around the same time, the Edison bulb became the standard. It wasn't mandated, it just happened that way. Like Beta and VHS. Some people say Beta was better than VHS, but VHS got to be more popular for some reason and left Beta by the wayside. And that's kind of what happened, the way I understand it, with light bulbs. So pretty soon, if Westinghouse is going to stay in business, they need to quit building this, because the more popular bulb is this, and they start making this in the mid to late 1900. So around 1905, 1908, Westinghouse bulbs are going by the wayside in favor of Edison type bases, and pretty soon you can't get these anymore. So what does a church have to do to light their church? If they can't get bulbs, they're going to have to go through and change all the sockets out. So my presumption is in about 1910, all of the sockets in the St. Mary's Church were changed out to a different fixture, and there was probably a lot more options available by 1910 than there was in 1888. And I don't know exactly what they put in, but they had to change them. Now, I didn't know this until this morning, because this is the first time I've taken any of these apart. This one's a little stiff, and I'm not going to force it because I don't want to break anything. This one came out relatively easily, and then this is actually an Edison base that was fit into this Westinghouse socket, which it was never designed to fit, but it probably did function, but it was probably unreliable because nothing holds it in like these ribs do on this one. So it fit fairly loosely. So it was, when they couldn't get the right lamps, they had to use something, and that was it. Obviously, Edison type socket has threads in it and holds the lamp down firmly against the contact inside. So here's what I think happened. 1910-ish, the church hired somebody to come through and change out all the lights. They boxed up all of the old lights, lamps, fixtures, sockets, and whatever it was that they needed to change out. Maybe they retrofitted fixtures, changed out these sockets they were cheap enough to do, and left the boxes in the attic. Why they just didn't throw them away, don't know. Okay, fast forward 50 years. My dad, a 20-year-old apprentice electrician, is up in the attic doing some work. Thought it was very interesting. These were already, nearly 70 years old, 73 years old or something. And he recognized they were already antiques and thought ahead to save a few. So he grabbed these three plus that shade, plus this one extra shade holder, and for some reason this socket was in the box. I'm not sure why. This has some good age to it. It's solid brass. I'm not sure what the significance of this is and why it was in the box, but I just thought I'd show it for fun. So my dad grabs these up, and my whole life I never saw these until just a few weeks ago. So in all my 60 years I never saw these, but he spoke of them often. My dad and I would be out on the ocean fishing, and once in a while he would, while we were just idling, waiting for crab rings to fill and this kind of stuff, we were chatting about things, and he'd often talk about this stuff. And he told me that, he said, these things are very rare and very valuable, and he claims that he turned down a $500 offer on these. And I thought, that's interesting. One of these days I'd like to see them, but they've always been tucked away safely in the attic, or etc. Well, so a few weeks ago I get these, and I actually put them all back in their box without looking at them very closely. I truly thought they were these, and then a conversation last Friday, I realized that they were not. They were these. Now the research begins. What is this? Well, I told you it was a Westinghouse patent and all of that information. So I joined a group page on Facebook, and it's called Antique Lamp and Light Bulb Collectors. So this is where the collectors of incandescent lighting gather and share their knowledge. So probably the most knowledgeable people in the world of incandescent light bulbs are in that group. And I posted pictures of these and things I wanted to know, and I learned everything that I just explained to you. But I've also asked about value, just because the statement that my dad made, that he had turned down $500 offer. Are they extremely valuable, or was he just talking? And right now nobody will throw a figure at it, because from what I understand, having a light, a socket, and a shade all together is kind of unprecedented. It's never happened that anybody knows about, and a price has never been established. So we don't know what that is. I've actually asked again if somebody would please put out a price on what this would be worth, and I'll tell you why I really want to know right now. So over the weekend I went to our local museum here in town, and I was asking about pictures of the inside of our St. Mary's Church, but the pictures would have to be of the original building when it was originally built in its first 20 years or so, because these would have been changed out by 1910. So I need a picture that was taken around 1890 to 1900, to be accurate, and I would love to see in the background that these lights were installed there to put the history together. Now, they have no pictures of the church. And what I didn't tell you yet is in around 1980, I'm sorry I don't have the date in my head, that original church burnt to the ground. It burnt to the ground. There was nothing left. It was a wood structure, and it was arson. A guy set it on fire. We lost such a significant, beautiful building. It's today still bothers me to no end that somebody could do that. Anyway, the building is gone, and a new church was built in its footprint. But the museum has no photographs of the interior of the original building in the time period when these would have existed. They gave me information, contact information for the church, which, as I mentioned, is a new building or newer building. And I sent them an email over the weekend, but our museum suggested that they aren't really good about getting back to me, and it might take some time and some, persistence on my part to get in contact with them. But to my surprise, yesterday, which was Monday, they got back to me, and I didn't know this, but they are kind of still in the process of putting together their own museum in a separate building that they own next to the church. And they are extremely interested in this collection, and they have found interior pictures showing these lights in the background. I did send them a picture of these so they know what they were looking for. So this is pretty exciting to me. Now, in no way is this collection for sale. I will keep it. It will be part of our family, hopefully forever. But I do not want these to maintain their life wrapped up in bubble wrap in a box where nobody can learn the history. So my intent is to honor the history and to tell the tale about light bulbs, to tell the tale about how these were in the original St. Mary's Church when it was built in the late 1800s and would have had to be replaced around 1910, that they sat in boxes in the attic of the church for 50 years until my 20-year-old father, before I was born, grabbed 3 of them out of a box with permission and has had them tucked away for 60 years, saving the history of a building that then burnt to the ground, taking everything with it. There was absolutely nothing salvageable in the building, and now we have actually pieces of that original church. And I was very excited that the church sees these as significant, at least to the church. I see them significant to the history of lighting. I see them as a significance to the church, but also to honor my dad and his foresight to save this piece of history, not knowing how rare the having pieces for the original church would be, seeing as how the original church is gone, 100% gone. So it is something that survived because it was in his attic all these years. So my goal is to, by the way, I'm meeting with the church's 2 people that curate their new museum in 2 days, and I'll take this collection to them so they can see it, and together we'll talk about how to preserve this history. But my goal is to maybe build a display or work with someone to build a display document the history of the lights, document the history of its attachment to the church, and honor my dad all at the same time in his thought to save this for history. So, and I think I think it will go something like this. This is, was all installed, and I'll find more accurate dates. These were all installed in a church that was built. The construction probably started in 1888. Our town got electricity about that year. So this would have been one of the first buildings wired for electricity at that time. By the time it was built, we had power. And the church isn't, well, the whole downtown was fairly small at that time, but the church isn't far from where that power source originated. And, we'll just document everything all the way through. So it was installed here. By about 1908, bulbs had become very difficult to get. Not long after that, they were trying to use what was then available. These probably worked, but they didn't work well, and they weren't reliable. And then by around 1910, things had to get changed out to Edison style if they're going to maintain lights in their church. And then, these became boxed up and put away. So somebody had the foresight to box them up, put them away, or didn't have the heart to throw them away. Yet you couldn't get a bulb for it, so why keep it? Anyway, that's kind of the history. So I did want to share that with you. I wanted to document all of this stuff because I think soon I will loan these to the museum. And it's for that reason I've been pressing the collectors in the world to give me a price for this, something I can use, because I've worked with museums before and we've donated many items to museums, my wife and I, over the years. When we were part-time antique dealers, we would get things that were, historically significant to our town, and to preserve that, we donated many things to the museum. But when you fill out your donation form, a monetary value is something that you need to write down, and for their purposes and for your purposes. And then we were donating items, we didn't ever want to see them back. For these, it'd be more like a permanent loan. So I could go see them, anybody could see them. People will learn from this. They'll get that history, they'll get that tie to the church, and then they'll get to know my dad just a little bit. So that's the video I wanted to make for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed the history lesson, and then understand, Edison invented the light bulb, but through my research, there was roughly 12 different socket configurations in the very early 1900s. So depending on which you chose to wire your house with, at some point, if you didn't choose Edison up front, you ended up with Edison down the road because you had to change them out. But also remember the early light sockets, you put an adapter in with a plug-in in it. It was also, a power source. Of course, electricity was invented for lighting, right? And then appliances came later. So the very early houses would have had, a meter and maybe one or two light sockets for a little one-room or two-room shack. And then if you wanted, years later, you had some piece of, I was going to say power equipment, I really mean an appliance. Then you had to put an adapter in with a plug-in, or adapter with a screw shell and a plug-in in the side. You guys remember that stuff. That's how all that came to be. And then electricity continued to evolve. So thanks for watching the video, guys. Do give me a thumbs up on the way out, and share this with your friends that may want that history. And if you're familiar at all with the St. Mary's Church, Albany, Oregon, Google that, and you can find some more history. there's a lot of pictures of the church in flames. Very sad to watch, but it is reality. So that's history, can't be changed. All we can do is learn from it, right? All right, guys, that's it. Westinghouse, early Westinghouse, later Edison base. Yeah, that's it.